that your phone or mine?
What'd you say?
Is that your phone or mine?
Gotta be yours. I turned mine off completely. I turned everything off. Uh-oh. I'm getting that. Hey T,
Hey, what's up?
I'm getting that message again. Says I'm 98% uploaded already. Should
Okay,
I
that's
be?
fine. Yeah, that's good.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, as long as it's uploading, that means you're fine.
okay.
Test 1 2 test 1 2. What's up, y'all? What's up?
What's up, y'all? Is Via the Falcons training this weekend?
I didn't hear you.
Oh, I said is Vi at the Falcons training camp this weekend?
He's all good. We got the benediction this week. I knew this was going to be an industry-focused convo, so
I got you.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome to episode 169 of This is the G Podcast. Yes.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I hate to say it because we go through this every year. I've been doing this podcast for 4 years. And it's unfortunate because we live in the South, we live in the Southeast, that you know what we get this time of the year. We're in the season. And we do have to send our prayers and love to all our G's in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia. It was just a mess overnight. A few days ago, it was bad. We tape on Sunday, and as we tape on Sunday, Georgia, Troup County, LaGrange got hit with, I think that they're looking at this as an E4, possibly.
Wow.
I don't think it's an E5, but the actual storm in Mississippi, and I'm looking at the numbers here, was an E4, E5. And, we're talking a couple of weeks ago about LA getting, a tornado, which is very unusual. But the thing about this, when you think about it, if back in the day, because I'm old enough to remember that Kansas, it was Oklahoma, it was Texas, we would get storms, but it seems like, and it has, the tornado alley has shifted. And, you just have to feel for a lot of the folks. Mississippi, this city was probably the poorest area, one of the poorest areas in Mississippi. A lot of these homes, for the most part, aren't well built. So, an E4, E5, devastating. So our prayers, our love, goes out to those folks. President Biden, I know, is doing his job, and approving the emergency declarations. And, we'll put our prayers in for these families in the cities for a quick recovery. Okay. And also, if you had March Madness brackets, it's not much better. It is just, I'm sorry for the basketball fans. I mean, who knew? I mean, who knew? I won't go too deeply into it, but who knew? I just have to. I mean, Alabama, Houston out, all the the blue bloods gone. It's just
it's the year of the underdog. I think all the people, like all these top seeds, they got sent home very early.
Very early. Our guest is time here looking at us like, is this a freaking sports pod?
No, and trust me, I am sports illiterate, but I'm just saying it's time for a shift because, I don't know about anybody else, but you get tired of seeing the same people play year after year after year.
But you know what, Tanya B, and it hasn't really kicked in yet, but these NIL deals, there's more parity, I think. And that's not the complete reason, but I think you're just seeing more people attracted to these schools that don't typically win. So we'll get into it. We'll have somebody on the show in a couple of months.
I think it's pretty cool. And, big ups to Dawn Staley and women's basketball is really making a statement this year, I believe.
Staley needs to coach in the NBA. I'd take her for the Hawks.
I know that she does. She coached the Olympics. She
should coach the Hawks.
I know, but I know, and the Falcons too, for that matter. No, they're not ready for that jelly. She's not ready for it because she does not. She just, as Big Frida said in Beyonce's Lemonade, I did not come here to play with you hoes. Yeah. And Dawn is about her business, and she is a proven winner.
Yes, she is. Absolutely. Also, I want to thank, again, Judge Kelly S. Hill, Cobb County Superior Court, coming in for Women's History Month. Thank you so much, Judge. And big thanks to our super fan, impromptu producer, Gigi Price. Thank you so much for sending Judge Kelly my way. Thank you so much. And I got to get to it. We're going to do news first, but I got to say, thank you so much, man. George Cheedy, thank you, man.
Happy to be here.
So much for coming in. And let me tell you, I follow George on Twitter. That's how I heard about him. And, his tweets, his demeanor, his comedy is just, it's essential to the times we live in. And he hits a lot of what's going on directly on the head. His knowledge of Atlanta is stellar. And it's interesting to watch him. And one thing, tell us now, George, how do people subscribe to what you do? The link. How do they?
So for folks who want to follow what I'm doing, you go to the Atlanta Objective, and that's atlantaobjective.substack.com. That's where that's where like the big long think pieces show up as I'm looking at what's going on around the city.
Mm-hmm. And it is definitely in depth. He's worked in politics, city council member before. He was a U.S. Army reporter, covered the Pacific. Again, the dry sense of I won't call you dry sense of humor because I have the dry sense of humor. I
have a sterling wit. That's what I'm told.
He does have a sterling wit. He's a contributor to countless news agencies and publications. Recently, I posted one of his Rolling Stone articles. And one of my favorites, you worked for the Creative Loafing back in the day. Am I correct? And,
a little bit. I contribute here and there.
Contributor. And he's a UMass grad, Amherst. So definitely give him his props. The MBA from Tech, have you figured it out yet?
No. I don't know what the hell I was doing. Like, I'm much smarter now than I was. Like, that much is clear. Like, and if I knew 20 years ago what I had learned at Tech, there would be a lot more people in jail.
Yeah. And Georgia Tech, man. Has Georgia Tech improved, you think, with all the moves they're making? Because
I think they're getting better. Plainly, I think they are a growing they're a growing institution. They are not stagnant. My only concern is that they're in Georgia, and Georgia has got some weird stuff coming up. That's going to make Georgia Tech less attractive to people.
Do you think when you were at Tech, did you ever think that Georgia would get this much, the University of Georgia would get this much momentum ahead of time?
I didn't, because I'm I have a Georgia Tech student's disdain for the University of Georgia just in general. So
Because
no,
you are,
I
okay.
did not. But it's a really competitive university.
Yeah,
Like you have to have your stuff together to go to the University of Georgia. You cannot be a slouch.
My money
is-
went there, so yes.
yeah, it's a more selective college than my undergraduate school was. It's like they're important.
Yeah, so true, so true. Hey, Tanya B, George, hang on for a minute. I want to go ahead and do news with Syracuse Mike. A lot of headlines this week, and then I want to get into what I asked George to come on the show about. What I asked him to come on today. So we'll get into the news and we'll come right back. Here we go.
News team, assemble!
It's time for the Week in News with Syracuse Mike.
UBS has agreed to buy Credit Suisse. UBS is Switzerland's largest bank. The emergency rescue deal of their biggest rival is designed to tamp down the financial market panic that resulted after the recent failure of two American banks. Colm Kelleher is the chairman of UBS.
UBS intends to downsize Credit Suisse's investment banking business and align it with our conservative risk culture.
New York City is on alert, and security has been beefed up before the possible announcement of an indictment against former President Donald Trump. New York Mayor Eric Adams.
We're doing what we always do. We're monitoring comments on social media, and the NYPD is doing their normal role of making sure that there's no inappropriate actions in the city. And we're confident we're going to be able to do that.
The website Politico says an indictment is expected Wednesday. That's according to 3 people involved in the deliberations. A grand jury in New York is investigating whether Trump falsified business documents in 2016 in order to make hush money payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels. Trump has urged his supporters to protest. In another legal matter closer to home, lawyers for the former president filed a motion to quash the final report of the special Fulton County grand jury. That grand jury investigated whether Trump and others interfered in the 2020 Georgia election. Trump's lawyers also want DA Fani Willis disqualified from pursuing a case against the former president. He said he would be arrested Tuesday, but he wasn't. In fact, he still hasn't been indicted. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office has put numerous witnesses in front of the grand jury there and even offered former President Donald Trump a chance to go before the grand jury. That is the biggest indication that the DA will eventually indict him. If he is indicted, Trump will likely be the first person to make the news public. In the meantime, demonstrators who want to see Trump indicted far outnumbered MAGA supporters Tuesday outside the Manhattan Criminal Court, where he is expected to be charged. The surveillance video of the March 6th incident at Central State Hospital in Virginia has been released. It shows officers dragging Ivo Otiento, a mentally ill black man, into an admissions room where he was moved toward a table before being laid down and restrained on the ground. He was already handcuffed and shackled. Otiento's family saw the video last week. His mother spoke about it publicly.
My son was treated like a dog, worse than a dog. My son was tortured.
Otieno died in custody. Also last week, a Virginia prosecutor charged 7 sheriff's deputies and 3 staff members at the hospital with second-degree murder. A grand jury indicted them Tuesday. TikTok's chief executive, Shou Zi was in Washington Thursday and forced to answer questions about his company's relationship with China, as well as what it does to protect young users. It was a tense hearing on the Hill as the company faces a bipartisan push to ban the app entirely in the U.S. over national security concerns. The House Energy Committee chairwoman is Kathy McMorris Rogers, who says TikTok is clearly a security risk.
TikTok is a grave threat of foreign influence in American life.
ByteDance, a Chinese company, owns TikTok, and their CEO says his company operates independently.
Only vetted personnel operating in a new company called TikTok US Data Security can control access to this data.
Throughout the hearing, Xu stressed TikTok's distance from the Chinese government, something many U.S. lawmakers find hard to believe. The U.S. carried out airstrikes on an Iran-backed group in Syria after an American contractor was killed when a suspected Iranian-made drone attacked a facility housing U.S. personnel in the northeast part of the city. 5 U.S. service members and 1 other U.S. contractor were wounded Thursday in the attack on the coalition base. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen told the American Association of Bankers Tuesday that there is a possibility that more bank rescues may be needed, but not right now.
The situation is stabilizing, and the U.S. banking system remains sound.
Yellen's comments were intended to make it clear that the U.S. is committed to protecting this country's banking system.
Hey, before we get into, first, thank you so much, Syracuse Mike. But before we get into why I asked you to come in, George, I got to ask you this, man. When you hear all this and you know what's going on in Atlanta, all this together cumulatively, as a journalist, man, where are we? Where do you think we are as a country right now?
Honestly, I think we're on the edge. I think this is an inflection point. I think it can go broadly either way. And I don't necessarily think our destiny is completely in our own hands. Take Deutsche Bank, for example, since we're talking about bank bailouts for a second. We will never bail out Deutsche Bank. Like, the United States government is not going to bail out a German bank. And right now, there are people burning stuff down in France. And so you have to ask yourself whether or not the rest of Europe is going to bail out Deutsche Bank either. But if Deutsche Bank goes, a whole bunch of other things go all at once for everybody. We don't control, not really, the war in Ukraine. We have an inflation problem that is a product of worldwide economic dysfunction. I'm holding my breath. And I think a lot of other people are too. Like, we're in a really uncertain time.
Yeah, I agree. The other thing, and this is more Atlanta based, who do you think does best news in Atlanta right now? Who's really serving the people best?
So it's funny, like, the problem here is that everybody is serving the public much more poorly than they used to. And that's just straight up, like, when I joined the Atlanta Journal-Constitution in 2005, there were 200 journalists working at that publication. And I think they're under 60 now. Wow. Yeah. Cutbacks. Yeah. And it's the same, I've got to say, for all of the television news. Channel 2 is the big dog. The Channel 2 is connected to the AJC, and it's Channel 2 and then everybody else. And I have a show on Channel 5, so bear with me here.
Yeah.
I think the core news mission is being served by all four major broadcasters in Atlanta. And I honestly think that Channel 5's news department stands up to Channel 2's on any given day. I think they do just as good or better, depends on what you're looking at. Yeah. There are a few standout journalists at every single one of these publications and television networks. For the stuff that I've been working on, like the Young Thug case, Michael Seiden at Channel 2 is a leader. Like, he'll kick everybody else's butt. He has kicked my butt from time to time. Where you really want to look is at the local level. Like, get away from television, get away from the AJC, and look at who's writing at sort of the hyper local level. Like, Decatur-ish does excellent work. Axios, even though it's owned by Cox right now, is also doing excellent work. Both NPR stations are doing excellent work. Like, the local NPR folks can stand up both to the AJC and any of the television broadcasters.
Yeah, good stuff. And I asked you to come on, man, because you said on one of your interviews, you told an interviewer asking you questions. They called you a journalist, an investigative journalist, and you stepped in and you said, "No, I'm just a journalist."
Right.
And he said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And you said, if you're a journalist and you're not investigating, then you're not really being a journalist. And I heard that, and honestly, it's amazing because so many journalists are doing it for the likes and for the follows and for the fame and glory, and I admire people like you, because this is why you get into journalism, is to find out what's really going on and report to the people. So kudos to you, man.
I appreciate you
on a lot of the stuff you write. And those are the kind of journalists we need, because these are the kind of times that are really uncertain, and we don't need the bullshit right now. We don't.
One of the things I'm looking for out there is, like, my problem with my journalism, my internal critique is that it doesn't scale. That if I am some lone wolf journalist and I can't create more me's out there, then I'm not sure I'm actually doing it right.
Yeah.
There are other people who are pursuing stories, story by story, that are starting to get at this in a way where they can be self-sustaining.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm doing okay right now. Like, I've got a roof over my head, money in the bank, and that's new. And I'm as shocked as anyone, but there it is. Like, I've managed to carve a niche out for myself, but it shouldn't be a niche carving thing. It should be, there should be, if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, somebody else needs to be able to step in and do stuff. And I think there are people out there who are starting to get at that in a way, because I think the market has finally started to shift. And there are people who are, if they are good and they are diligent, the audience will find them.
Okay, man, we're like a 1 hour show. So I'm going to ask you, I've seen your writings. Everybody knows or has access to the 80-page indictment and all the information contained in it on YSL. Okay. Can you give us a synopsis of where we are currently with this case in Fulton County? Just a synopsis.
So let me 10,000-foot view. A street gang called YSL that was operating primarily in southeast Atlanta, and an accused street gang has been rolled up, and 24 of its members are charged with gang and racketeering crimes, including some murders. And 2 of those people are the rappers Young Thug and Gunna, who are very, very high-profile rappers. They were arrested last year in like April, May, June. And they're probably not going to see the start of this trial until June.
Wow.
Because jury selection is intense, because this trial is going to take 6 to 9 months to conclude. And so you have to find jurors. You have to find jurors who are willing to sit for 6 to 9 months and set aside the rest of their lives. So they're going through hundreds of people to try to find 12 jurors and 2 alternates who can sit for this whole thing.
Hey, is it true that they had not found a juror at the beginning of February?
No, they had not found a juror, and they haven't found one. They're unlikely to have a single juror before the end of March. Like, I don't think this gets started before May.
Yeah.
They're still trying to qualify people on the basis of who has an exemption or an excuse that would get them out of a 9-month jury. So if you've got young kids, you don't get to sit. If you have a job where you can't walk away for 6 to 9 months, you can't sit. If you are too young or too old, you can't sit. If you're a full-time college student, you can't sit. And so you're going to end up with folks who are either unemployed, who don't have children, or are retired. Ultimately, that's who's going to be on the jury. And I don't know if you really could call that reflective of the community. But that's who you're going to get. That's how this is going to go. And in the meanwhile, all of this other crazy stuff just keeps popping up in the background as this marches along.
Well, we were having a conversation before, when we first met, about the fact that we don't want to sound like our parents when it comes down to how we view the music, the artistry. I grew up, basically on Prince in high school.
Yeah.
So Prince, of course, if you know, Prince basically led to, albums being stickered, by Tipper Gore.
And
Two
Live Crew. Two Live Crew thing is 30 years old now. I can't believe it.
Old. It's amazing. So, with that being said, you're mentioning that in order for them to get jurors, most of these jurors are going to be old, much older. Mm-hmm. Do you think that the music industry is possibly in peril, considering the outcome, what the outcome might be of this case?
They're already in peril.
Yeah, they're already in peril, but it's more than that. It's a question of how you define peril. Let us face the peril. My sort of broad concern about the music industry is that it is catering to an audience that seems to want vicarious exposure to criminality. And I know what that sounds like. I know I'm being judgmental, and I don't want to be like Tipper Gore, but I think there's a qualitative difference between Two Live Crew, naughty lyrics about sex and drugs and whatnot, and when you're actually looking at dead bodies in the street, quite literally dead bodies in the street that are connected to groups of people. My concern is that the industry has been banking on this sort of voyeuristic look at what it views to be authentic street life in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And one, it's not. Street life in Atlanta is not what you're listening to in these songs. That's a lie. I would just start with that. But what I want to see is the music industry itself start to police its own activities around who they're signing and what they're promoting. Because it's not the sort of thing that can be, you can't Tipper Gore your way out of that problem.
No.
You can't legislate your way out of it. I'll say this right straight up. I don't think you can prosecute your way out of it.
Yeah.
It has to be a choice that the industry makes because it's in their financial interest. But I think this case creates that financial interest.
Okay. And we talked about Times versus Sullivan, which every journalism student has to eventually study. Do you think the YSL case and even the Fox News case will have impact on a lot of industries, including our industry, including podcasting, including, people who blog, all that? Do you think this YSL case could also be something that could impact what we do?
I don't think Times v. Sullivan is threatened by the YSL case.
Okay.
I think the Fox News thing, and in particular the noises that Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis is making, are a much more serious threat to Times Sullivan. Times Sullivan essentially says that a news organization cannot be successfully sued for slander or libel, I should say, unless someone can prove actual malice. That it's not just that you got it wrong, but you got it wrong because you hated the guy and you wanted to hurt him. And that's a high bar.
Yeah.
There's got to be room for mistakes to be made in order for, in other words, journalists are going to avoid covering things that they think are going to draw a lawsuit.
Nobody wants to take a chance. You're right. Nobody wants to, cutting edge. Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason why small news organizations have been dying the way they had over the years, and why we've got this sort of blandness in, because even now, even with Times Sullivan in effect, news departments shy away from writing about things where whoever they're writing about can push back. We don't read enough about corporate malfeasance because they're afraid somebody's going to come after them with money. If Times Sullivan dies, we're looking at happy fun news about children, children's sports and old folks' homes, and the picnic, and what, instead of this guy should go to jail and this is why. Yeah. That will go away. That's what's at risk with Times Sullivan. I don't think the YSL case threatens that. But I do think that the Fox News case might, because Rupert Murdoch's got enough money to throw lawyers through a Supreme Court that does not have the interests of the public in this regard at heart. Yeah. I don't think the Supreme Court likes journalists very much.
Yeah, agreed. Man, by the way, great article you did on Cop City. Thanks for sending that over to me. And I'm going to ask you about Cop City in Atlanta. Well, it's not Cop City, but that's the name it's been given.
We're going to call it whatever. You know why Cop City? We call it the Atlanta Police Training Facility Center, whatever.
I don't remember that.
Cop City. It's because it's short.
Yeah.
It's because it's 7 letters in a space.
Yeah.
Because headline space is dear, and that will fit in a tweet,
Yeah.
and that's why.
Yeah, I agree. But and from what I get in your writings, you have respect for the leaders of the city currently, and you think they're capable. But this situation's murky for a lot of people. And,
I agree.
and even when you look at the surveys really are split among racial lines. You've got the white community in favor, and the majority of the black community who aren't in favor. So
it's closer though. Like, it's not like it's every white person thinks this is a good idea and every black person. It's actually much closer than that. Like, there's like a 10-point difference.
Yeah, it's not how black people feel about the Democratic Party versus white people in the Republican Party.
No, it's not like that at all.
Yeah.
It's more like a 60-40 split opposed in the black community and like a 55-45 approval rate in the white community, maybe. And I might be exaggerating that a bit, but it's clear. It's close. And it's close because people have really legitimate concerns about crime in Atlanta. They also have really legitimate concerns about how police should be trained and where the money should be spent. Mm-hmm. And so, reasonable people can sit on either side of this argument. And my problem is unreasonable people on both sides of this argument are the ones who are being heard.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think based on what the mayor is saying, he's in full support? I know there's some things that
I think he has to be at this point.
Yeah, I agree.
He is. And it's what I wrote. Like, he's in a no-win situation right now.
Yeah, I agree.
If he did a 180 tomorrow and said, this Cop City thing, that's a bad idea, I'm going to cancel it. Mm-hmm. Everybody who's been a victim of a violent crime in Atlanta and their supporters would get together and they would beat him with brooms until he left the building.
Yeah.
But if he continues on the way he's going on, like, there is a really legitimate youth movement that is starting to emerge in Atlanta that views Cop City as like their symbol of, this is why everything is screwed up. It's because this is a priority instead of housing and homelessness and police brutality issues and basic equity in a city that has the largest degree of racial inequality in the United States. Like, it's a bad time to be the mayor when those two forces are pulling at you. Like, he doesn't have a good middle ground to stand on. Yeah. If real political talent under these circumstances would find a compromise, it would be looking for a compromise, and then tell all of the people who don't want to compromise, you're the problem. Like, that would be the way out. But I don't know whether or not anybody, the mayor or anyone else, has enough political talent to get there.
Yeah, I agree. So with that being said, man, it's a big issue. And you mentioned, the fact that you've got unreasonable people on both sides. And you look at what's going on the college campuses, the AU Center, they're adamantly opposed to this and very vocal about it. Do you think, man, by looking at everything we just talked about, do you think Atlanta's in a good place as a city?
I still think Atlanta's in a relatively good place.
You've been here how long? How long have you been? You've been here.
I moved here in 2005.
In 2005, yeah.
So I've been here 18 years. I've lived here longer than anywhere else in my life. And I think in a fundamental way, Atlanta is still as strong today as it was 2 or 5 or 10 years ago. There are problems in Atlanta that are very serious. Like, Atlanta has the worst inequality problem in the United States.
Yeah.
It is starting to look at a housing problem that is going to remind people of San Francisco or New York if it keeps going in the direction that it's going. Our politics are kind of cracked. And because we're going to be the center of the political universe until we stop being a purple state, we're going to get all of this stuff coming from outside forever that are going to amplify all of the internal things that we've got. Like, those are problems. But the fundamentals of Atlanta, like, it is a diversified economy that is friendly to well-educated Black people and note the qualification there,
Mhm.
that it is a strong economy that is resilient regardless of whatever else is going on. It's still less expensive than New York and Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And there are a few bright spots here where people really can make it if they're talented in ways that they can't. Like, all of that's still true. Like, Atlanta's still a great place, but it's not a great place for everybody. Like, I feel like Jimmy Breslin talking about New York 30 years ago. Like, I both love and hate Atlanta equally.
Mm-hmm.
And
Because
that's
you're right. I mean, the wealth gap is huge here. You have
Well, you got
the haves and
wealth,
have-nots. Tanya B, go ahead.
wealth disparity. We're top in wealth, health, and like I said, all this inequality. And it seems like the people that are getting hurt the most are the people that were the born and bred people here. For us, for some, if you come from another, like say, like you said, from New York, or you come from California, or or somewhere like that, and you see what the rent is here on a one-bedroom apartment, it's cheap for you. But the person who's lived in Atlanta all of their life can't afford to live in Atlanta anymore. And I stick and I stand by this. Mayor Dickens and everybody else on city council, everybody who got voted in this last go around, when re-election time comes up, those same people that voted them in will not be here to re-elect them, because they will have to leave the city because they can't afford to live here anymore.
So true. So
absolutely true. Here's a statistic that people cite often. Somebody born in the bottom 20% of incomes in Atlanta only has a 4% chance of getting into the top 20% of incomes through the course of their life. It is the lowest income mobility in America of any major city in America. People who are moving here are economically mobile, and as often as not, they're well educated or well trained, and they're looking for like the job that pushes them up.
Mm-hmm.
And for them, Atlanta is an excellent place to move for all of the obvious reasons. But this YSL trial that I'm covering, like, one of the things that I keep coming back to is all those kids, all of the folks who were in this accused gang, like, they all grew up in poverty in one of the most impoverished parts of this city that remains impoverished, and that's Cleveland Avenue.
Cleveland Avenue.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, the trial does not change the conditions of Cleveland Avenue.
Right.
Mhm.
Like, it does not, this anti-gang push isn't being paired with like a neighborhood reconstruction project that keeps people out of gangs who are on Cleveland Avenue, that raises property values, that gets people jobs, that keeps them in school, and that lowers the risk of young people joining a gang in the first place. It's just, all right, we're arresting and charging these guys. And sure, if they are guilty of the crimes that they're accused of, they should be arrested. They should be charged. They should be convicted. They should go to jail. And they should stay there long enough for other people to be safe. But it doesn't change Cleveland Avenue. And so 5 years from now, some other set of 25 people are going to be looking at a RICO case, because the same conditions that created a criminal street gang here will have created another one. That's a problem for me.
Yeah. One last question, if you have one, Tanya B, and George, let people know how to get in contact with you. You got a question, Tanya B?
I agree with what you're saying. Is and say until they have pushed everybody out of every other section of Atlanta, until they're ready to come and gentrify Cleveland Avenue, it's not going to change. But then when you push people out, the question then becomes, like, so they can't afford to stay here. Like, they can't afford to leave, they can't afford to stay. So where do they go? They just retaliate and they take it to the streets.
Yeah, I agree. All right, any last thoughts, George, and let people know how to get in contact with you.
Just Tanya, you had something else?
No, just about this whole YSL thing. I think, how they're doing this whole thing. And, some of these people I have worked with in the course of my career, and this whole thing is, don't let the art destroy these people and blah, 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 blah. And I know, and I'm like, and that's like 6 over here, half dozen the other. The reason why I say that is this. A lot of these hip hop artists do not live what they write about, nor do they write it. They may have an idea, and then they take it, and then they have all these ghostwriters have been ghostwriting hip hop lyrics since the beginning of hip hop. That's one thing. But then I believe there are some that do actually write about their experience and how they articulate it. Like you have people like, let's just say R. Kelly, was illiterate. but was able to still produce music. So I guess this whole thing about lyrics shouldn't be used in cases against hip hop artists. I'm like, y'all need to find something else, because I just think it's a double-edged sword, because not only do they not write these lyrics, most of them can't write, period. So and they turn to the streets, and this is what and so it's almost like the recidivism rate of these people that come and goes like a revolving door. They come out, they go in, they come out, they go in. It's almost by design, but at the end of the day, they are the most downtrodden. The people that make the money, those people are sitting in those up behind those robes with or without hoods in these courtrooms making decisions because it benefits them.
And nobody, and I think, George, you said it best. In terms of the labels being responsible ultimately.
They don't care. They just care about money.
Right now, but some responsibility has to be. Jadakiss came out with an article this week. And at one point he didn't agree with it, but he says now, he agrees that, the labels have to be responsible for who they sign. Right. The other thing, and I'll say this, and, I'll be brief, our generation I grew up on, again, I go back to Prince. I mean, the Dirty Mind album in high school, all you have to do is listen to that album and how edgy and how crazy it was and how over the line, controversy, so on and so forth, all those albums. So no one's really, pushing, censorship. I don't think this is a censorship issue.
I don't think so either.
People are dying right now.
Prince wasn't killing people. Prince's music didn't kill people.
I don't
think it's censorship. Go ahead.
My parting thought here is this.
Okay.
Atlanta's got about 500,000 people in it, about half of Black. About 80,000 of those Black Atlantans are poor. Mm-hmm. In any given year, and this last year, you had perhaps 800 aggravated assaults, shootings, and 170 murders, almost exclusively of poor Black people. But there are 80,000 poor Black people who live in Atlanta. And this idea that the perception of what Atlanta is being defined by this subset of less than 1% of who Atlanta actually is, that the rest of the world's image of what we are is being shaped by a narrative, a street narrative that doesn't reflect the lived reality of most people. Never mind most Black people, never mind most poor Black people, is a problem for me. It is it is the means by which racism festers. Like the rest of the world will say, well, yeah, look at how they shoot each other. These Black people do this, and it is a fundamentally bigoted idea that is propagated by the music industry because they have an audience for it. There is an audience in the world that wants to see Black people talking about drugs and murder and, misogyny, as much as to say that this must be real. This is authentic, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm here to push back against that and say, absolutely not. This is not how most people live here. This isn't even how most people who are on the edge live here. And, that statement needs to be heard as loud as this music, and it never will be. And it's one of the things that I'm looking at in context of this trial is the degree to which the narrative around Atlanta changes. Like, does this trial cause people to reevaluate what authenticity actually looks like?
Good stuff. Give it up for George Chidi, y'all. Definitely a journalist, and here in Atlanta. How can people, again, subscribe to
Find me at the Atlanta Objective. That's the atlantaobjective.substack.com.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you taking the time on a Sunday, on a stormy, rainy Sunday at that. So thank you so much, George. I appreciate you, man. Thank you. And hopefully we can get you back in here closer to trial, whenever that's going to be. Who knows?
Sometime in September.
Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right, let's go ahead and take a break. and we'll go come back with Tanya B and the T. Again, thank you, George. Thank you.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is BJ Murphy, and I want to talk to you about the BJ Murphy Show Redirecting Our Dollars campaign. Now, did you know that Black Americans have about $1 trillion in spending power? And since 2001, Black spending power has increased by 108%. The BJ Murphy Show, we are dedicated to helping aspiring African-American entrepreneurs launch and grow their businesses and provide advertising, media support, coaching, and resources. At the BJ Murphy Show, we're going to continue to be one of the most influential voices in Black America, boldly espousing economic opportunities for entrepreneurs, small business owners, and nonprofit organizations. So to find out how you can become a part of the movement, the Redirecting Our Dollars campaign in your city, reach out to me, BJ at bjmurphyshow.com. That's BJ at bjmurphyshow.com. Can't wait to hear from you.
Now then, children, it's time for tea.
It's tea time, y'all. Sipping the tea with Tanya B.
Oh, Lord, Tanya B. The Jonathan Major fans are holding their collective breath.
Okay, first of all, I just want to say shout out to BJ Murphy. He is one of the members of the 2023 class of the National Black Radio Hall of Fame. So shout out to BJ Murphy.
Yes.
Yeah.
I gotta get him on. He's coming on the show soon too.
Let me get my mic so it sounds nice. The first thing I want to tell you about,
but it sounds like BJ Murphy. Go ahead.
Is that Rihanna's about to drop that baby, very shortly. But you know that the cops were called back to her house again after a man tried to sneak onto her property and ask her to marry him, and it was not A$AP Rocky. Now this man. And I think from the looks of him, he probably took the megabus all the way from South Carolina to ask her to marry him before, security squashed him. But the thing is, the cops were called. The man was escorted off the property in handcuffs, but he was released and not arrested. And I said, well, he can just come back again because there was no consequence for that. But I find that very interesting because back in 2018, the similar thing happened. Thank goodness Rihanna was not at home. And this guy broke into her house and he was hiding in her home for 12 hours and was discovered by her assistant. Now he was arrested. So this other interloper didn't make it past the driveway, but I think Rihanna, her security got to get it together.
Well, you know what? They need to call. You ever seen them? Well, you haven't seen it. I'm pretty sure. The Reading with Monique. They need to call Monique. That character. They need to call the fruit. They need to call. No, right, I'm just saying. Right, if anybody out there who's seeing The Reading, that's security.
Yeah,
the security on that house. That's what she needs.
Call the fruit of Islam. Every week. They don't play either, bean pie or not. But every week it's like I try to find something good. You cheer for people and they just keep messing up. And this is Neo's third week as the dumb donkey of the week, and here is why. Now he's being sued and charged in a crypto scam, and all coins aren't good coins, but this one is serious because the Securities and Exchange Commission is involved, and they were the one that filed charges against him, Soulja Boy, Akon, even Lindsay Lohan got caught up in this one. And what they did, they got down with this entrepreneur named Justin Sun, and he's actually under fire because he illegally was vending assets, manipulating the market, and recruiting celebrities to use their names and their platforms to endorse and approve, his situation, which was a scam. And they got paid for it. They got, when they say you got paid an undisclosed sum, you got a bag. And what's interesting about this is that all the parties so far have put money into a pot except Soulja Boy because he don't have no money. He needed that check from Justin Sun. And right now they've offered $400,000 as a settlement. But this is like part of the same situation with that other company, FXC or FTX, where they're suing Shaq and Steph Curry and some others. So it's like, y'all, and I say, well, should they be responsible? Do your due diligence, because if you keep investing in scams, people are going to give you the side eye. And Neo already got the side eye. So I don't.
And from what I heard, Tanya B, they also have to make sure that they disclose to the public that they're
getting
paid. They're paid endorsers and not, actual users in many cases, but just a paid endorsement.
Most of them don't use it. And if they did, you see, well, Uh, Anyway, okay. Now let's talk about some more scandal. The Isley brothers. Now Ron Isley been sued and put in jail, and he still has not learned. And now he's being sued by his brother Rudolph. And Rudolph left the group back in the 80s. He became a minister. And Ron Isley just has a really, I call it a sketchy, shady St. Louis past. Remember, he lost a lot of female fans when he put the pause on Angela Winbush. That was just one thing. Then he did go to jail. And then, he had a brother, O'Kelly. And O'Kelly died in the early 80s. And do you know, for years after O'Kelly passed away, Ron Isley was cashing his deceased brother's royalty checks and keeping the money and not giving it to his wife and family. And then the same thing with Ernie. Everybody knows his MO. You got to pay him in cash so that the authorities won't look at him and say, where'd the money come from? He had, and I'll say allegedly, but I know what I know. He was putting the money. Allegedly. Okay. I allegedly know what I know. Allegedly putting money into Ernie Isley's bank account, and sometimes Ernie didn't know about it. So it's like, man, I just say, karma is a big old dish served up on a very large platter. I mean, you've already been to jail, and they had that song out called "The Plug." Ron Isley, you are not the plug. And he's just always getting funny with the money. They had an agreement. He was supposed to split the money amongst his brothers because Isley is the family name.
I hope they get this settled. There's too much. I mean, in terms of how people feel about the music, the artistry. I just hope that they find a way, so it doesn't go so public.
Right, you see him there, 85 years old. I mean, come on.
Just go out the right way.
I just say he ain't the plug anyway. And this is something I think a lot of people I know. You're happy, I'm happy. I don't care. I don't care if Lionel Richie ever go back to the Commodores, because as far as I'm concerned, he's going on the bottom of my.
I was hoping Clyde Orange is still alive. But go ahead.
Nah, he don't want Lionel. No, Lionel getting in the way. No, the Tonys are coming back, and I don't mean the awards. I'm talking about the Wiggins family.
Yes.
One of the few. But think about one of the last few family bands. I mean, actual band of the late 80s and 90s. It's Raphael, his half brother Dwayne Wiggins, who lives in Atlanta right now, and their cousin Timothy Christian Riley. They have mended their fences. I guess they're going to do like a Bon Jovi or a Rolling Stones and go get that bag, because they're all getting close to the age of Social Security.
Yep.
And we're ready. I mean, you talk about hits. I mean, and the thing about it was when they came out back in the day, when they have even like Sons of Soul, and even when the Greatest Hits
album, revival,
all those.
Oh, man.
What had happened was, when I was living in Philly at the time, they took the Tonys after, especially when Feels Good went, crossed over. They took the Tonys, and instead of putting them on a tour like how we would see like Keith Sweat and BBD and, Heavy D and Levert, they took and put them on an MTV tour, which means only the pop audience got to see them. And instead of them coming to Philly, they took them to Hershey Park, Pennsylvania, which is not, like getting on the train and going downtown. So a lot of people didn't get, I didn't see the Tonys until I took a trip out to the Bay Area, but while I was living on the East Coast, I'd never seen the original Tonys in concert. So, I mean, I just
let me tell you where I saw them in concert.
Where'd you see the Tonys?
They opened up for Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation. If you remember, they opened up for Janet on the Rhythm Nation tour. And in every city, what they would do, they'd open up, they do a short opening, and the after party, they do the after party. So the Tonys would do like a 2-hour show. So they came to Atlanta. They did the venue. It may have been back in the day, man. We're talking probably the Omni was still up back in the day.
Wow.
When Janet did the Rhythm Nation tour. But they did the Roxy in Buckhead back in the day. So the Tonys did, after the concert, about an hour and a half, 2 hours. And Janet was just hanging out in the crowd, and her people, her girl, her dancers, her girls back in the day. It was just, I mean, it was probably one of the best outside of the Prince after parties that used to happen all the time. That was probably the hottest. But I look at, the Tonys, and I'll be brief about this. The Tonys were like, for me, you had Earth, Wind, and Fire growing up in my era.
But
let me say this. Earth, Wind, and Fire was my band. That was the band. Earth, Wind, and Fire started to kind of wind down. Then it was The Time for me. Yeah. The Time was like that band that we were saying, damn, when not what time is it, when the self-titled album The Time came out, everybody was like, damn. Then The Time broke up, and then the Tonys, the Tonys existed. And then after the Tonys, the only thing you had, maybe Mint Condition and a couple of other, smaller bands that were, but it was, man, Tony's were one of those bands,
Yeah.
And now you've got Bruno Mars and the Hooligans that are
Yeah.
kind of keeping
I
that
mean,
whole,
they're bringing it back,
you know,
but yeah,
yeah.
we had an era where we did not have bands.
Yeah,
When we
I
think
agree.
about it, we didn't.
We
And I think
lost
that, the Tonys and Mint Condition were the last, bands where they actually played the instruments, not, get
Oh,
up
yeah.
there and do a track date. So I am so ready for this. And the thing that's really cool about it is, shout out to Walt Reeder Jr. and Gentleman George and the Black Promoters Collective.
Wow.
Yeah,
Walt Reeder Jr.
yes,
That
and
man.
wait, and
I remember
not the
seeing
father. No. We ain't talking about him.
Don't you say it.
No.
Don't you say it.
Woo-hoo.
Don't you say it. Keep it going.
We're gonna talk. He owe me money. No, we're talking about Junior and
No, but
Gentleman
Junior's
George.
awesome kid. Yeah. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So they said, look, y'all, let's make some money, get out here and get this bag. And I'm excited. And that's now. I don't do concerts. I don't do large crowds, but for that,
Yes.
I will be
I'm
there.
excited. Give it.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah.
Okay. And let's get to this story everybody's been waiting for. This just developed, in the last less than 72 hours. Do you have a sound effect? Wah, 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 wah.
Yeah. Let me try this. Here we go.
Yes,
go.
like
Okay.
that. Jonathan Major.
Mm.
It's just like Tyra Banks will say on America's Next Top Model, we were really rooting for you. We really wanted to see you do well. And in case you had your head under a rock, he has been arrested in New York after an alleged domestic dispute with his British girlfriend. Basic. And he claims, of course, he is the victim and that he's completely innocent. And of course, he's lawyered up, and the lawyers are saying that they've got evidence to present to the DA. Expecting all charges to be dropped immediately, but the damage has kind of been done. But it says that two of them were in a vehicle where they were having an argument. There are witnesses. Two other people saw that. But the interesting thing about it is there's a written statement that was submitted by two different women, and now they are recanting.
Wow. Well, you know what? I say this, and again, he is innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
And you go on Twitter right now and most social media. He is the scourge of the earth.
They are dragging him for filth flying. But I got something else to tell you.
But let me say, I gotta say, when you look at, we don't know him that well. We really don't. He's still pretty much new on the scene. And when I look at that whole, because now he's part of the Marvel universe. Okay.
For how much longer? Mm-hmm.
But you look at the people who've come up through the Marvel universe who've not been the best of citizens. You look at Ezra Miller, who's playing the Flash and his shenanigans for over 2 years. You look at, who is now James Gunn, who's now part of DC, who, was at one point accused of being, a pedophile and some other things. I mean, I don't know if that was proven or not, but a lot of issues going on. And then you look at, a lot of what Robert Downey Jr. went through, in his past life. Mm-hmm. But I still say give him the opportunity to be proven guilty or innocent before you start chucking him under the bus, which I see a lot of right now. I don't think that's fair. It's not like he's got a list of stuff. But they claim they've got video, Tanya B. They claim, the defense, his people claim they have definitive video. So we'll see. Go ahead. You were about to say something else. Go ahead.
No, it's just, it's a double standard, of course. But here's the thing: what I think might be damning to him, and this is, it's always bad when your past comes back to haunt you. And he's known for not for dating non-women of color. But let me make sure I gotta read this. I gotta get this right. Okay, allegedly. A classmate who is not of color that attended Yale Drama School with him is claiming that he is surprised that it took this long for the issue to be exposed because he'd been putting paws on chicks since they were in college.
You got receipts? So
if these women come forward with receipts, it's going to be harder for him to prove his innocence. And right now it's just like he's got a high profile relatively quickly. This last, it was Creed 3 kind of really raised, it did raise his profile exponentially.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's just like Chris Brown. you got enablers around you. If he's been doing this since college, who enabled him to get away with this? So it's all I can say is the jury is still out.
Yeah.
But he needs to take a lesson from Will Smith, Lakeith Stanfield, even Chris Brown. But the thing about it is, we'll get to Nate Parker in a minute. But the thing is, he could have had 99 kids and 55 baby mamas. But domestic abuse with somebody that looks like that basic British woman, I'll just call a thing. When you alienate your core fan base, like that's what's happening with him right now, it takes a long time to get redemption. And if you don't believe me, ask Neo.
And for the sake of just brevity right now, because we're short on time, the Nate Parker situation, I was doing GP3 podcast, and the release of what was the movie he did with
Birth of a Nation.
Birth of a Nation. And all of it, I mean, it all sounds like this. I mean, he had a college, the rape case in college, which I don't think he was ever convicted of. You had people saying the same thing about his past. And, it's just unfortunate. I hope, again, I mean, let the wheels of justice roll. Let them do their thing. I mean, before we jump to, I mean, I'm not here to justify any kind of bad behavior.
No, and I'm not going to bash him.
But let me say this, y'all watch enough social media and TikTok to see how these fights are in, among some of these younger couples. I'm not saying it's Tina and Ike. You know what I'm saying? We don't know. We really don't know. So if there's a video, we'll see if the video comes out.
Right, but the thing is,
I'd love for people to see it.
If this chick was doing that for attention and to raise, and to get put on and to get some go away money, then I'm calling. You remember how TLC and Lisa Left Eye Lopez, rest in peace, went up to Clive Davis' office and with the baseball bat and the girls from we need to go find that girl and beat her ass down. That's all I got to say.
Didn't Lisa beat Andre Rison's ass a couple of times?
Yeah. Before she set his house right. Before she set his house on fire, I'm just saying we gonna call this the spirit of Left Eye. We gonna get right eye. So I'm not even gonna call that girl's name, but girl, who you are. She gonna need to rest in power, because honey, she done mess with the King's with the King's with the King's third leg, and that's all I got. Okay.
All right, here we go.
What you watching this week, Tommy B?
Just real quick, just added to Peacock. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to see it. It is worth the watch. Knock at the Cabin, another M. Night Shyamalan movie, stars David Bautista. And if 2023 wasn't apocalyptic enough, it's a more apocalypse for you. But I don't want to give out any spoilers. But just say, if you've seen Cabin in the Woods, the old funny, the one with Sigourney Weaver, just think of it as a scaled down, unfunny Cabin in the Woods. But it's interesting, and it's on Peacock. If you get a chance to watch it. Also, and thank you for sending me this, Tanya B. I had a chance to watch it today. On Oxygen True Crime Season 2.
Oh, yeah.
Watch The Real Murders of Atlanta, and they cover the assassination of Sheriff-elect Derwin Brown, a case that really shook Atlanta law enforcement to the core.
No, let me say this. To this day, it still shakes my family to the core. We have never been the same.
And it touches you personally, because this is your family. These are your cousins.
Yes, that's my first cousin.
Shout out to Brandy Brown, did an amazing job retelling the story on camera. But check it out. It's on Oxygen True Crime Season 2. Talks to Jackie, the legendary Sheriff Jackie Brown. I'm screwing her name up, but I'll get her name.
Her, the lady.
And I'm pissed off because I know somebody's gonna call me and cuss me out, but she's a legend. All the legendary law enforcement is in this episode, and it is definitely the case that sealed the name of Sidney Dorsey in infamy forever.
And his horrible toupee.
Yes.
What's interesting, this comes on now, and we're approaching the anniversary of his mother. My Aunt Pravina was one of my favorite aunts. She was like the cool hip aunt everybody wants to have. And we're approaching actually the anniversary of her 15th year that since she passed away. It broke her heart, and it broke all of our hearts, because I don't have brothers. So that was the closest thing that I ever had to a brother. And because his father, my mother's only brother, and our grandfather, Thomas Brown, had passed away, he was the head of the family.
Yeah, we got to have them on the show in April.
Yeah.
If you can, maybe April or May. Let's go ahead and do that. And let me get it right for all the folks in law enforcement in the city of Atlanta or in government. Jacqueline Barrett.
Thank you.
I think she's Jacqueline Barrett, Washington now. She's
Sheriff Jackie.
Sheriff Jackie. So she's in this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just a couple of leftovers, things we didn't talk about. Quinta Brunson, and you mentioned this before. This is going to be next week. She's on SNL April 1st with musical guest. I don't know why, Lil Yachty.
Lil Yachty, I know. Well, no, he needs a check because he's caught up in that crypto scam. He needs the money to pay. No, I want to say one thing. Go ahead. I got one more thing before we go. I just want to say shout out to, and now you talked last week about Swarm. I'm
not finished. I got some more, but go ahead.
Just the fact that you look at rich kids or people that have high profile parents. They ain't got no talent, but I just want to say shout out to Malia Obama. She's one of the writers on Swarm.
Yeah, she is. She is definitely. And somebody else called me out, said, "Hey, you didn't mention that."
We did
wrote on Swarm. I'm like,
wait, okay, who said that? Howard? Wait, who said that? Howard? Howard? Did you say that, Howard?
Rightfully so. Rightfully so.
Okay, yeah.
But I got to say a couple of things. Amanda Bynes has been placed on psychiatric hold following a mental health episode. And if you have kids or you grew up in the generation of the Dancing Lobsters on the Amanda Show, it's amazing to see a lot of what this young woman has gone. She's like Lindsay Lohan.
She's worse than Lindsay. She's worse. It's a shame it's worse. They found her walking down the street naked.
But I remember because, Millennial Nick, it was one of his favorite shows, the Amanda Show, the Dancing Lobsters. She was the judge. Just an amazing, talented, funny woman who's just been reduced to psychiatric hold.
Who knew back then? Who you would have never thought, looking at her then, that she'd end up like she is now. And clearly, maybe her parents were just going for the bad, because she clearly was probably struggling back then.
Yeah. Also, Doja Cat has a fourth studio album coming out called Hellmouth. Beyonce and Adidas have agreed to part ways, placing the future of Ivy Park in limbo, y'all. Netflix released the trailer for, if y'all are Bridgerton fans, the spinoff Queen Charlotte, She Black, on May 4th. ABC's Abbott Elementary has been renewed for a third season. Tom Brady is buying a WNBA team, the Las Vegas Aces. He's buying part in it, but it still has to be approved. The Rolling Loud tour in New York 2023 has been canceled due to logistic errors.
Yeah, right. No, they had problems. They had problems last time. That's what that is. Go ahead.
Yeah. You basically mentioned this was coming back in season 2 of ABC's The Wonder Years. The premiere date is official now. It's June 14th. So The Wonder Years premieres season 2 on June 14th. And again, I got to say a big thanks to George Chidi for coming in, journalist George Chidi. I'll make sure the contact information is on the notes. Follow us on social media. We especially, again, if you don't watch us, you can come watch us now on YouTube. And please, all you have to do is search This Is the G Podcast on YouTube. We tape live every Sunday, 6 p.m.
Yes.
I'm gonna have to make a song up, Tanya B, to get people to go to YouTube and check us out. But still keep streaming the audio. Still keep getting the podcast every Sunday night.
Yes.
But go and just subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm gonna start singing on the show. That's coming up.
Lord. You better call Lionel
Richie. I know you want it. Also, follow us on Twitter at This Is the G Pod. And any final thoughts before we get up out of here?
No, just good. I just want to say, just this week in the Birdwire, we paid tribute to Bobby Caldwell. I say the original Cat in the Hat, and Blue Eyed Soul. And it's just like, it's good music. You don't care whether he's black, blue, green, or grizzly gray. Now, next week on the Birdwire, we are going to salute Fuzzy Haskins, one of the original founding members back to the 60s of Parliament Funkadelic. So, although we keep doing this rest in peace shows and these tributes, I just love pulling out, I love pulling out that music.
And just real quick, and we'll talk about this next week. Your movie is coming out, Spinning Gold, Casablanca, on the 31st.
Yes. I'm telling y'all better get ready.
Wiz Khalifa as
George Clinton. Yeah.
That's gonna be
Wait,
crazy.
let us see is Gladys Knight. Jason
Yeah.
Derulo is scamming Ron Isley. I'll tell you a story about that after we get off the show's
Let's
over.
do that. Let's do that when the show is over.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you've got some heavyweights in there, Jay Farrow and Johnny Gill. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
you better get ready.
And I heard he was
ready.
trying to get actually Spike Lee, and it fell through. There was some issues trying to
Yeah.
get Spike Lee to direct that. But
Yeah.
anyway, y'all, again, condolences and our prayers go out to the folks in Rolling Fork, Mississippi, all through Alabama, and definitely the folks in LaGrange, Troup County, Georgia. Man, there were people trapped in debris. People, still being found in debris. But if you're looking for a way to give charity to the victims of these just tragic tornadoes, Charity Navigator, I'd recommend go there because it will give you the best charities to give to, because you just can't give your money to everybody or donate your items to just anybody.
Oh yeah.
Guide Star is another one. The state of Mississippi website. Just make sure Brett Favre's picture's not on it. And United Way of Central Mississippi, the United Way of Central Mississippi, American Red Cross, and there's a GoFundMe. If you go to GoFundMe, they've got a specific location where you can actually give to the victims of the tornado.
Directly.
So, our prayers go out to those people, to
Yes.
to our fan, the G's. A lot of folks in those areas listen to the podcast as well. So we just want to say, I hope this thing, the recovery is speedy, because in a lot of cases it hasn't been. So I hope that they change that.
It hasn't been. These people, that place was flattened. It looked like the tornado in the Wizard of Oz. I mean, these people had nothing left.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, y'all, but again, thank you so much for your support. We appreciate you. Again, follow us, check us out live, and check out the podcast. And with that, episode 169 is sure enough in the can, and we are out of here. Thank you so much, Tanya B, at your remote location.
I'm
Appreciate
back,
you
yeah.
as always. But you know what? We got to do this. We did not, and I almost walked away without doing it.
Benediction?
But
No,
here we go.
need it. We need it.
I'm here to preach to you today.
Here's your inspirational moment with Vi.
We may suffer for many reasons. Some suffering is the direct result of our own sin. Some happens because of our foolishness, and some is the result of living in a fallen world. Christ never sinned, yet he suffered so that we could be set free. When we follow Christ's example and live for others, we too may suffer. Our goal should be to face suffering as he did, with patience, calmness, and confidence that God is in control of the future. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 21. For God called you to do good, even if it means suffering. Just as Christ suffered for you, he is your example, and you must follow in his steps. All I'm saying, people, no matter what you're going through, no matter how bad it is, God is always in control. What that means is it's going to be all right. God will get you through. Amen. Amen.
Amen, Vi. Thank you so much, man. Vi's down there near Columbus, so hopefully, I got to reach out to my brother, make sure he's cool, because he's
okay,
may be in that same area. So thank you so much, y'all. And with that, episode 169 is in the can, and we are out of here. Peace and power to the people. Have a great week.
It's a wrap.